the Vice President for Conferences, but more importantly for this session, I am the session moderator. So this is VR, so as long as the presenters don't mind, you can stand wherever you want or sit wherever you want. And just really looking forward to this presentation. Let's see. Where is that sound thing, Mark? Do you know? Mark, do you know where you do the spatial thing? Did he leave?
No, I'm here. I'm here. Yeah, you gotta go stage controls, turn off private volumes.
Lecture seating?
Oh, you want lecture seating?
I don't know.
No, I think we want to change to a flat voice, right?
Yeah.
On history, culture, and the arts. We have 3 really good presentations queued up for today. Yes, not quite sure what to do about that. Everybody, if you would, please move up to the front of the room.
Do you want me to change the seat? We can change the seating format.
Yeah, let me do that. Let's do maybe lecture seating. No. Pair partner tables.
No.
We were at conference tables. This is probably it. Want to try this?
That's probably best.
Let's do this and just sit in the front row if you can.
Yeah, it's weird. For some reason, at the back of the room, I couldn't hear you guys at all.
It's funny. I read a book in when I was an undergraduate who was failing out at Penn State, and it was called "How to Get Better Grades and Have More Fun." And the one thing I remembered from that book, one of our speakers mentioned earlier, and that was earlier in the conference, and that was if you sit in the first 3 rows, apparently it's supposed to you're supposed to get better grades. Correlation does not equal causation.
Hey, Dennis, we've got spatial voice on. That's why people at the back can't hear us.
No, actually, I'm rolling over. It says click to change to spatialized voice.
I just changed it.
Yep, it's working now. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay. Anyways, let's get started. Once again, my name's Dennis Beck. I'm the moderator. Going to do things different than what you're probably used to at a research conference. It's called a flipped presentation mode, where each group will have about 3 to 5 minutes to present, and the rest will be Q&A and discussion. So if you would, keep yourself muted when you're in the audience, and if you're someone else who's another presenter, also mute yourself until it's time for you to speak, and then when you've just finished speaking, mute yourself again. That will help for a better audio experience for everybody. So with that said, there's a few questions that I wanted to put in the chat, just for you to think about for all of the presentations. And of course, oh, look at that. Of course, I put them all once. Here, I'll try to put them separately, but something for you to be thinking about as each presentation comes is on. I want you to be thinking about them and thinking of answers that might actually go across all 3 presentations. So with that said, the first presentation, and I don't have that slide up for some reason because, oh, here we go, is by Chris Hoffman of UC Berkeley, Visualizing Ancient Egyptian Landscapes and Material Culture, Cultural Context for Immersive Visualization and VR. Chris, go ahead.
Great. Thank you very much, Dennis. Can people indicate if they can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Great. Dennis, if you could take us to the next slide, please. Great, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Hoffman from UC Berkeley. I'm happy to be here to talk about our project, Visualizing Ancient Egyptian Landscapes and Material Culture. And I hope you were able to watch our video. I put a link to it in the chat also. We received seed funding 2 years ago to develop a VR experience that brings together the work of 2 Egyptologists exploring the frontiers of visualization in their field. Elaine Sullivan from UC Santa Cruz is developing 3D visualizations of the ancient Egyptian landscape, and Rita Lucarelli from UC Berkeley is developing 3D models of sarcophagi in order to understand the materiality of magical texts inscribed as hieroglyphics. Our goal was to develop an immersive experience, basically a guided tour that bridges these scales. The experience begins with the bird's eye perspective above the sacred landscape and then takes the player down to the ground. The player descends underground, learning how the tomb was built, and finally enters the tomb. Inside, the player can view the massive bone sarcophagus and interact with the inscriptions to view translations of the hieroglyphics. Audio narration from one of our Egyptologists accompanies most of the experience. The challenges that we encountered included repurposing very high-resolution content that was built for scholarship and documentation, and using very different tools and workflows. That proved to be a big challenge. Also, balancing historical accuracy or authenticity with the usability of experience came up several times, leading to some really interesting design discussions and negotiations about the next steps in the development. Some of the discoveries and kind of aha moments that we had were interesting also. Our project really benefited from the power of a multidisciplinary and diverse team, comprising students, faculty, librarians, and IT staff, people who are Egyptologists, anthropologists, developers, and project managers. The design process was also one of discovery and learning, as we re-excavated some of the original literature from like the early 1900s in order to rediscover the spatial context and relationships. We needed this, of course, to build a VR experience. As we tested the experience with students and staff, one of our team members found a real interest in supporting the person wearing the headset. It reminded me that most people have still not been in a VR headset or have very limited experience, and it was wonderful to have someone focused on making the player comfortable. She acted almost as a tour guide. This initial testing also confirms that bridging the macroscale and microscale in VR can be a powerful way to communicate complex academic topics and content to a broader audience. There's more to understand here, both in terms of the practices and designs that help communicate most effectively at these different scales, and how best to move from one scale to another. We do still have some work to do to complete this project, including adding text to accompany the audio narration to address some of the accessibility issues. But this prototype will be complete this summer. The project team is now discussing how to develop an experience that can be published, and I'm excited that our team is motivated to take this effort to the next level. There really is a shortage of high-quality content and experiences coming out of these kinds of fields, and the potential for learning and discovery is very high. Thank you. I'm looking forward to your questions and discussion.
I'm sorry, I think Dennis's computer froze up. He's rebooting. So can everybody hear me? I think we've got question, a quick question.
Yes, let's see. I see a question in the chat. How do you think about addressing uncertainty in a historical reconstruction model? Yeah, that was really interesting. We did have to kind of balance kind of the authenticity and what the Egyptologists really thought of as sufficient to explain and to present with the usability. So those were really some of those kind of negotiations that we had. And there was, and we admitted from the beginning that this isn't like a a reconstruction. It's more of a representation and even an interpretation. Because these particular scholars are very well versed in kind of advanced visualization technologies, this is something they're very comfortable exploring and articulating also.
Good, good. Thank you, Chris. So next up, we have exploring the rhetorical affordances of augmented reality in the context of the Anthropocene with Lili, McKay, Colleni, Breanne K. Litz from Utah State University. Go ahead.
All right, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me.
Yep. Gotcha, McKay.
Great. Great. So my name is McKay Colleni. I'm an undergraduate student in the Mechanical Engineering Department at Utah State University, and I've been working with Lili Yan and Dr. Breanne Litz from the Instructional Technology and Learning Sciences Department, also from Utah State University. Today I'm presenting our paper exploring the rhetorical affordances of augmented reality in the context of the Anthropocene. So augmented reality, or AR, is a tool that alters or augments the user's physical environment, commonly by using an app on a cell phone that usually has a camera with it. AR can be designed to formally and informally teach about the concept of the Anthropocene. So what is the Anthropocene? Coined in the year 2000, it is the current geological epoch in which humans are the dominant factors of change on our planet's climate and environment. We were interested in the rhetorical affordances of AR applications in representing the Anthropocene. AR apps can help us understand concepts of the Anthropocene by providing information, and the apps have a role in how the information is presented. Design features that make AR unique in presenting that information are the rhetorical affordances. We conducted a systematic review to examine the design and interaction in 14 AR apps to find the affordances used to convey the Anthropocene. And we found 3. First is the use of virtual objects. Virtual objects are used to alter a user's physical surroundings through the app to show the possible effects of human actions on the user's current location. This lends to the second affordance, which is point of view. Point of view is important for AR because the most useful and unique perspective that AR provides is a first-person perspective. This is important because AR lets the user see their influence on their own environment in order to connect to the users directly rather than as a vague or distant concept. Third is the input-output link. It characterizes how the AR app and the user communicate with each other. Motion controls from the app are a common way to let users feel more immersed and invested in what they're experiencing. Other novel ways we found this link was an app that used a heart rate monitor to control the number of virtual objects appearing in the app. It is worthwhile to compare AR to another immersive technology, virtual reality, or VR. VR is able to fully change the environment a user sees, hears, and experiences. Although this gives an opportunity to present users with large and otherwise unseen problems, VR doesn't allow users to connect to their own actions and experiences in their own surroundings. Core concept of the Anthropocene, to mention the extremely high cost of VR systems in comparison to simple AR systems.
I think we lost sound. Can you all hear?
Hey, if you can hear us,
Yeah, sorry, I think I cut out.
Oh,
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
you're back. Yeah, cool.
About 15 seconds ago.
Okay, where was the last thing you guys remember? Oh, am I gone again?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. Does anyone know where I was at when I cut out?
You were starting to talk about VR.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, what I was saying is that VR is able to fully change the environment that a user sees from augmented reality, because in augmented reality, you get to see their own actions and experiencing their own surroundings rather than being disconnected in a different location. And that's a core concept to the Anthropocene, to reflect on your own actions. And then I was also saying that VR systems are often a lot more expensive and inaccessible than augmented reality, as the augmented reality is used on cell phones. Then it's important to understand these affordances of AR, because as AR becomes more accessible, we can help inform how to design AR apps to further demonstrate the Anthropocene and other concepts as well. And the unique way that augmented reality conveys the Anthropocene helps users reflect on their own activities and their impact on the world. And that's all I have. So do we have any questions?
Actually, I did have a question. Did this make you all want to design your own kind of Anthropocene-focused app? And what are some of the lessons that you've applied from your research?
Whoops.
You're can't hear you speaking now.
He seems to have cured.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Well, his sound was going off, so maybe he was having RAM issues.
Yeah.
Oh no! I hope he wasn't. I hope it wasn't something I said.
Didn't say anything.
I know. Darn it. Shall we wait a minute?
I bet he's logging off and logging back in.
Yeah.
Lili, who's one of the co-authors, is saying, "Can you hear me?" Which we can't. Maybe you have to come on stage? I don't know.
Lili, no, we cannot hear you. What you might want to try doing is if you click on the gear icon, the icon with the gears in the top right corner of the application, and then select reinitialize voice. No, that's okay. He's back.
Hey, sorry about that. My internet's been having problems all day. I thought I got it fixed by now, but all right. Have you had any questions since I've been gone?
Where did you go?
I just went back home for a minute. It's okay.
Sure. Grab an icy
I thought
Coke.
you were talking about me.
Yeah, you disappeared too, Dennis.
Yeah.
I've been having a crazy audio problem where I'll actually get a no device in the bottom left on the mic instead. It just disappears and then I freeze up. So.
That makes sense. Yeah,
So,
I think my internet just kind of stopped for a second. It crashed.
I think Dr. Litz just was providing a prompt for you. She said they were asking if this inspired you to create your own augmented reality about the Anthropocene.
Yeah, it definitely has. We haven't, Lili and I have been talking about ways that we want to kind of expand on this project, and that's definitely a direction we want to go. We haven't formally into like ways about doing that, but we've definitely wanted to expand on our research and then also be able to design an app ourselves. Any other questions or follow-ups?
Can I just follow up real quick?
Yeah, of course, Lili.
So like one of the motivation is we feel like although Anthropocene, the term is pretty new, that some of the ideas are not that novel for most of the people. So having a term like this might make people feel intimidating to know more about that. So we kind of like feel like we probably can design something that focus more on what's more closer to what we are familiar with and what is more specific to our local community. So that's kind of motivation that we want to know more about what exists, what have people already designed, and how can we move forward. Yeah.
So Lili, what I gather from hearing my sorry, it's just sorry, is that any better? Okay.
Go ahead, Mark. I muted a bunch of people.
Yeah, thanks. Lili, so what I'm gathering is you're keen to look at ways to frame concepts relevant to the Anthropocene in ways that people can relate to, right? So what are some examples of that? Are you going?
Sorry, I think your question got cut off right at the end there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
I thought it was my audio again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You know, I was just interested, Lili, from what I gathered, you were you're keen to frame aspects of the Anthropocene in ways that are familiar to, or more familiar, or more accessible to people. Can you give us some examples of what you're thinking about in that regard? For example, will you be focusing on the climate change aspects, or the geological aspects, and then how would that potentially play out in what you design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things as far as the term the Anthropocene is that it's like, you know, a really strange sounding word. Like before starting this project, I hadn't heard about it myself. Oh, my mic's still on? It's saying it's got any problems.
Yep, we can hear
We
you.
can still hear you. We can still hear you.
Okay, great. And I think as far as kind of issues to tackle to make it relevant for people on that level is really wanting to focus on like that personal level, like something that they can do, something manageable, rather than like as really big concepts of like, because you mentioned climate change, and that's definitely a concept, you know, most people who we'd be looking at would hear, but this is a really great way to like get more to that more personal level, and will know what they can do in their own communities to make an impact.
Right. So a sort of a citizen science kind of approach.
Yes, exactly.
So I really encourage you to connect with the we have an emerging iLRN house, which or interest group focusing on place-based learning, and another one on nature and environmental sciences. And there were some discussions in the initial house meetings earlier this evening that were I think kind of resonate with some of this work that you've presented. So definitely connect with the leaders of those houses. Actually, John is co-leading the Nature Environmental Sciences House, and then our colleague from Penn State, Professor Alex Klippel, is leading the place-based learning.
Yeah, That's definitely something I should look into. Thank you so much. Dr. Litz at Utah State University is doing a lot of research with us about and has in the past about place-based learning, and I think being able to join that team and together would be amazing. Yeah, same with Lili as well.
Yeah, so definitely reach out to Alex, or I'd be happy to connect you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions or comments?
So I guess I had one question. So you, looking at the various affordances of augmented reality, is there any that stood out in terms of being like the most powerful in terms of creating a connection, emotional connection for people to the planet or to the way that humans are changing the planet?
Yeah, I would definitely say one of the biggest core things that makes AR unique in that ability is the first-person perspective that it lends to. Was the second affordance I mentioned, and just with their point of view, because AR has like a really good opportunity to be able to take a person in their own personal environment or surroundings to and like let them see how actions of humans and them directly in some cases impact those environments. So it's just a really good tool for connecting people to their local environments rather than as like a distant, like the world or something like that. It helps them put it into perspective.
So it takes those abstract concepts and makes them concrete. They really feel like, wow, now I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they see like themselves in those situations.
Right. Thank you. Good. That's good. Appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. See any other questions? All right, maybe we can move on to our third speaker and connect back at the end.
Fantastic. Sorry, Dennis, did you say that was a third slide, sir?
Yes, I think that was intended to be the third talk, so we probably need to go back to the middle slides.
Ah.
That's the one.
I could have sworn we heard from Chris from McKay.
Heard from me. I think it's the next set with Hubert Cecotti, I think is his name.
Nope. That's
one more. Go one more. That's his slide. Oh, I think the header slide is missing. That's the right slide.
Ah, I see. Okay, there's no title slide. That's why. All right. So the third and final presentation in this session is virtual reality for immersive learning in art history by Hubert Cecotti, Zachary Day Scott, Laura Huisinga, and Luis Gordo-Pelaez. So Hubert?
Yes, so there's also Zachary Descott in
Oh yeah.
So good evening, everyone. So can you all hear me properly? Yes?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So I'm going to copy paste a YouTube link in the chat. So you're going to have a video of the application, so you can see a little bit what's going on. So actually, the video. So there were two links at the end of the slides, that are supposed to be linked with the presentation. So you get the link here. So you will see. So it's a virtual reality application, virtual reality museum, and we're going to browse for different paintings. So that's what's happening in the video. So there's a desktop mode, VR mode. So while you can see it on your own. There is some sound, so I invite you to turn the sound off, for the video, if you have it run it on YouTube while I'm talking. All right, so about the context, about why we have this application. So first of all, we saw lots of good presentation with kind of end products. And it's very important to go back to what instructors are doing in relation to some learning theories, so in particular constructive alignment between the learning outcomes, the teaching activities, and the assessment, where we have this loop, and the instructor has to be involved in the creation of the different instructional material. So at some point, the instructor will have to change the material, will have to edit the content. It's very important for the instructor to have a simple tool to be able to modify properly the application in such a way that they can modify. It doesn't matter if they're going to teach, in any field, they should be able to appropriate the material in such a way that they can modify it and they can use it. So if the system doesn't correspond to some particular learning outcomes, it doesn't convey any particular learning activities for this learning outcome, then it's not going to be used. So it's very important to allow the instructor to modify the content, as well as providing to the instructor a simple way to modify it. So nowadays, so you have lots of solutions. Given the COVID-19 situation that are offered for, lots of, you all get tons of emails for online solutions, and we have different constraints from the instructor, and then we have to redesign some aspect of the content. So depending on if it's semester, quarter, in relation to the student population, in relation to what they want to teach, things are going to change. And therefore, so a course will have to be tailored in relation to particular population, maybe a particular year. So it's important to be adaptive. So the application that you have on the link on YouTube, so it has been implemented using Unity. We've tested it using a Valve index. So we're looking at paintings, and we want a good quality on the screen in order to properly appreciate these different artworks. In relation to the rationale, so here we want to provide an application, virtual reality-based museum for for students in art history and instructor in art history. As for art history, it can be quite difficult to engage the students if you don't present the original artworks. So here, so for the authors, so we are in the Central Valley in California, so we are quite far away from Los Angeles, San Francisco. We are far from big museums where it's possible to bring students and to look at paintings. So that's important to find another solution using virtual reality in order to show to students paintings. So using virtual reality, so it's possible to present painting in the real size and the realistic light conditions, and we can highlight some particular effects, some optical illusions. So for instance, anamorphosis. So there is a painting that you have in the paper where you can look at a skull, and you have to position yourself in the virtual reality environment in a particular position in order to look this optical illusion. Now, in relation to the way the virtual reality-based museum has been built, so we have lots of applications, lots of virtual reality museum, but one issue is that they're static. So if you have an art history instructor, if they want to modify the material, it's going to be quite complicated for them to modify the content, to change the painting, to change the position of a painting on the wall, and all those things. So everything is already included. Typically, you have a set of paintings, and then you have to deal with it, and you have to almost tune your course in relation to the application. So here what we want to stress, so the notion of elegance. So we have elegance in art, and we want to have also some elegance in the way we design the application by really minimizing the choices that you're going to make for designing the application. So the only thing that the art instructor will have to select and to obtain, so if the art instructor has the images corresponding to the paintings, then the size, authors, some metadata, all the metadata corresponding to the paintings, then that's enough to fill a JSON file containing all the information, and then after to run the museum. So everything in the museum is based on the size of the painting. So the position on the wall is based on the size of the painting. The position, the default position of the user inside the room is based on the size of the painting, and the size of the room as well is based on the painting. So for each painting, so we're going to have a single room and browsing across the different paintings. So each time you're going to have a new room. So it's not like a museum where we're going to go in different rooms. We have a single room, and the room will change in relation to the painting. So in relation to the design for the creation, the architectural design within the museum, so it's really set to the minimum, and everything is driven from the paintings. So for the description of the questionnaire, so we have the possibility to ask questions, and then so we have the question with multiple answers, multiple choices, Boolean. So we record the position of the user in the environment. We can record how much time has been spent for the user to answer the question. So we have all this information that is recorded after all the question. So the metadata corresponding to the paintings, so it's contained within the JSON file. So simple file like XML, it's a structure file, but it's very easy to edit. For the instructor in art history. And we have as well on the site, so we have a web interface, but allows through a web page to modify these different elements. And the same way, so we have the possibility to edit the questionnaires that are going to be associated to the different paintings. So in relation to the mode of control, so it's possible to move, you can teleport yourself in the room, you can walk, and then so you have just a single button to select, so to point the possible answers that you have on the different questionnaires. So we have a questionnaire with 4 or 5 possible answers, and then so we have a submit button. So the way it goes, so it's really a controlled environment. I mean, for the instructor, it's nice, so they can really select the order of the different paintings. For each painting, we have different questions, and then so everything is well set, which can be an issue, like it's not possible like to browse among all the different paintings, so we have to follow a particular sequence. But what it's for the students in art history. So at this stage, so we have assessed. So we are more focused. I mean, given current situation and other issues, it has not been deployed yet in the classroom. However, it has been assessed in relation to the evolution. So workload. So how difficult it is to manipulate, to use the controls, and also the usability of the system. So that's what we assessed so far. So we presented 15 paintings, and for each painting, so we have different questions, and we tested. So we have 25 adult participants, and so now the workload was evaluated with another TLX test, and then we have a system usability test to assess the performance. So we had 15 paintings, state-of-the-art paintings that are typically used in art history courses. And yeah, so we have the ambassadors, so from Hans Hoffman the younger, so that's where we have this particular optical illusion where the user has to go in the environment, in the virtual reality environment, in a particular position in order to observe a skull that is located in the painting. So painting with different sizes, some can be quite impressive, and I mean, from the feedback that we got from some students who tested the experiment, I mean, I'm from Europe, so I've visited quite a large number of museums, and for these students from the Central Valley of California who have been to these museums to see the paintings, so that's really something interesting for them. In relation to the results, so we had some very good usability, low workload, so everything worked well. However, so what we can notice is that for people who are not used to wear virtual reality headsets, so being in the virtual reality environment, so it's very difficult. Well, we're kind of shy to move within the environment. So if you are, and that's also why, I mean, we have this position that it was important to have a default position in the painting in such a way that you don't have to move everywhere in the scene to find the good position to appreciate the painting. So the participants were typically shy in relation to moving around within the environment. And for the user interface, so well, there may be too many possibilities for locomotion, so it may be too complex. So to conclude, so it's very important, like, I mean, for the instructor in art history, so even if you have the whole system, so they need the tools to edit, to modify the content in such a way that they can appropriate the system and just modify the content as they want. So we need an interface and super data structure for art history instructor in such a way that they can edit, modify, delete. I mean, they can do everything with the system. Key limitations so far. So the headset, so for long sessions can be an issue. So in relation where sweat, hygiene, I mean, particularly I mean, with the COVID-19, so to deploy such a system now in the classroom will not be possible. And yeah, we want to improve the user interface with different types of questions. So in particular, the addition of metadata within the paintings. So to locate particular elements within the paintings. So that's where we want to go. Also, so we've tested different light conditions, but that's something that's still ongoing. Now, in relation to the paintings, we just consider the paintings just as regular images. So we don't have any specific information in relation to normal maps, height maps, and any information that can provide some texture information. I mean, some 3D information on the paintings. So that's it. So I hope that you've enjoyed the link that I sent. So and it's better when you wear the headset, but well, hopefully you can see how it works. Thank you. Do you have any questions?
I have a question. Can you zoom in on the paintings, or are you in a static position the whole time?
No, I mean, you can move. You can go very close to the painting. So you have paintings that are very far. So for instance, for the coronation of Napoleon, so it's huge painting. So
yeah.
The default position, so we keep an angle. I mean, the field of view, I mean, the position is set in relation to the field, the default field of, in relation to the field of view. So when you start, you can see the whole painting. And then, so you can teleport and you can move very close to the painting. And there are some paintings, yeah, it's really important to go very close in order to look at all the details.
Well, yeah, you had the Holbein. That's why I was curious. To get a look
Yes.
at that anamorphic skull is a strange angle.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Hubert, this is Dennis. Did you...
Yes. Sounds good.
Did we lose your audio, Dennis, again? Yeah, looks like we lost audio.
I'll ask a follow-up while he's getting his audio set. As a follow-up to that question, I really like your next step about adding texture and normals to the paintings. I've always kind of had this hypothesis that showing the texture somehow of these paintings, which you see in a museum, can be really powerful. But I'm not sure I've really seen that done in a good way. Can you speak to that?
Well, depending on the material that can be used, so it will be possible to introduce some type of noise or to use some image processing, detect, depending on the resolution of the paintings, to find the direction of the brushes. I think there will be a way to find from the original painting and in relation to the material, like some granularity within the painting that could be added through additional mappings techniques. We have one history instructor, so Luis Gordo-Pelaez, who is the last author in the paper, so he's an art history instructor, and we followed his guidelines, and the system has been tested as well from another art history instructor, and he gave some feedback as well, but at the end, they want to be able to modify the system. So if they want to change the paintings, if they want to change the questions, it has to be dynamic, and it has to answer all their needs.
Well, that was something about this project that I really appreciated, the kind of design that this could be generalized as an application, that it would be easier for an instructor to swap in new JPEGs and new metadata and new quiz questions. I think that is something that is really an important direction of work in these areas for these kinds of educational contexts.
Yeah, because you don't know in advance how difficult that just about filling a JSON file. So you have a structure, so a painting is composed of, you have the image, you have the size of the image. So it's a very hierarchical structure where for each painting, so you're going to have different questions. For each question, so you're going to have the type. So it's just a hierarchy, and everything is within a text file. The syntax is very simple. So it's possible to edit it directly. It's possible to edit directly the file. However, so I have a student working on a web application where we have the representation of the JSON file within an HTML page, and then it's possible to using a form in the HTML page to modify the content of the JSON dataset, the database. So as long as you have the images, you know the size, you know the type of question that you want to ask, so you can set a series, you can set a sequence of paintings, and the system is ready to go. So to support learning, so we have some issues in relation to the cost of the material. So I see it more as an asymmetric type of learning activity where we'll have one student probably describing his experience during the application, and then the student could be assessed at the same time, and then the rest of the classroom could discuss some other things. But it will be quite difficult to deploy such a system, having each student having a headset, but would be but would be a dedicated classroom, but would be quite expensive to build. But it can be clearly, can support learning, different settings. So in the classroom, as I mentioned, and also in the library, where the system can be deployed. So on one hand, the students can look at the books, and on the other side, so they can go to a room and then use the system to look at paintings.
Great. Any further questions?
Oh yes. I mean, it's that's something that in the future, so we want to deploy on Steam ideally. I mean, well, we have to create the assets and all those things will take a bit of time. It needs some polishing to be properly released. But yeah, I mean, it works on Valve Index, HTC Vive, Oculus. I mean, it works for everything. We have just to change one part of the control so it's satisfied in the last Steam VR, the version 2 in such a way that it works for all different headsets. Yes, with Unity. So we have Laura within the audience and who is helping for the creation of for getting a better interface.
That process of developing.
Well, we hope to release it as soon enough, so it can be used for lots of people.
I was going to say, I think that process of designing and developing the interface is so critical, and I appreciate the Anthropocene talk for having a kind of looking across different applications to come up with some comments, because I know we had a lot of discussions about the design, and those almost were really turned on their heads when we actually had a chance to work with people in the experience to get some immediate feedback from folks, because we just got so close to the design and development that it really was important to touch base. I think the kinds of interactions we're trying to develop in support of these applications are kind of unique. But I wonder, Bert, if can you talk about kind of some of the process you went through as you were making some of those design decisions?
The goal is to be as simple. I mean, I'm from computer science, and I like the aspects of procedural. I mean, the automatic generation of content, where you specify some rules and everything should be generated. I mean, going to the bare minimum, going to be elegant in the design of what we want to create. So if you make a choice in the design and you don't involve the user, if you don't involve the art history instructor, then at some point, well, maybe they want to change and maybe they want to do something different. So we have to find some rules in order to limit to the minimum arbitrary choices in the way we're going to create the application. So it has to be generated. I mean, the rooms are all set, so you have just two parameters. I mean, the size of the painting, and then from the size of the painting, from the questions, everything should run.
Well, I agree completely. And one thing I'll kind of remark on that I found interesting in your application was what you had done with the controller. In our application, we went for a much simpler approach to the controllers, where basically you could use the trigger to select things and not much more than that. And I think in your application, at least what I saw, it looked like you could almost create the size of the room, you could move the space that you could walk around in, and to me that looked actually very complicated.
Yes. For the control, I think we'll have to go from just point and select, and that's it. So if you want to reach students who don't play video games, all students, if you want to reach all the students, it's just point and select. Otherwise, I think we will have some problems. So having the questions probably on the wall, or probably or to have all the different options, everything displayed somewhere, but to allow the students to discover the application, where it can be a break, it can be an issue. Well, they selected the paintings, they've created the questions. Yeah, well, basically they've set up the sequence of things, the questions, the size, all the information, all the painting information was done by the instructor.
Okay, so with the few minutes that we have remaining, Dennis has lost his audio, so he and I just have a kind of a final wrap-up question for our three presenters. Basically, we were interested in in your respective presentations. You spoke about the different affordances as well as to an extent the constraints of XR in your work, VR in case of Chris and Hubert, and then AR in the case in McKay's presentation. So, do you think there is a sweet spot of sorts where researchers can come to some sort of negotiated agreement or alignment in terms of how much of these affordances to make use of in each type of situation, and and if so, how might we go about doing that?
Well, I can go first. It's definitely something I've been thinking about, and right now I'd say that I don't know what those are. I think the best I can do is really foster a good conversation amongst the different participants in developing this project, so that there's a kind of a good understanding that trade-offs will need to be made in order to take advantage of the affordances while not sacrificing the the scholarly perspective or the academic content that the researchers in my case want to present. So it's all about providing a good space for that discussion.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that one of the main things that we want to focus on, especially in the research that I've done with Dr. Litz in our lab, is really being able to connect as many people as possible in a really meaningful way. And I think a lot of that comes down to experiences that are enjoyable and also accessible. And I think that's one of the main reasons that drew us to AR was we've worked with AR in the past, and it's been a really great opportunity to be able to reach especially like students at a younger age. So many people have access to cell phones or stuff like that, and even if we need to go into communities that don't have access to those, I think we're able to really bring in resources that is able to reach a broader audience, sure that everyone can technologies and get a foot in these ideas.
Well, on my end, I think it has to be completely user-centered for the development, including the user as early as possible to know everybody who's going to use the application and to make sure that they are properly involved in the development. Now for the research, it's a bit complicated. Defining the proper scope of the research. So we have some technical aspects. In this project where you have researchers in the humanities, you have aspects in education. For the technological part, so we have engineering, computer science. So having all these different fields, so it can be quite difficult to know what the research is about. Is it the research for humanities? Is it the research for education? Is it the research for computer science? And then trying to fit everything all together is an issue. Well, can be an issue, and I saw it from the reviewers and from different discussions. So you have different people coming from really different backgrounds, and to have a clear direction about where the applications are going. So that can be quite challenging.
Fantastic. Yeah. So Hubert, yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes down to user-centered design, doesn't it? When you talk about affordances,
Yes.
Affordances aren't, meaningful. The concept of affordances really have no meaning unless they're taken in relation to what is perceived by users or learners. So, absolutely. Okay, well, I see we're just about out of time. So thank you again to all of our speakers. And if we could get a round of applause, please. Applause all around. Thank you for sharing your work and for this stimulating discussion.
Have a nice
Thanks,
evening,
everyone.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.